Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the January 18th, 2023 Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My name is Rick DiLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who's our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, who's our third member. On the side tables up front, we have Wendy, who is from our solicitor's office, and we have John, who is from our engineer. And in the back table, we have Sean Halbum, excuse me, and Amanda Lafty, who are our township manager and assistant township manager, respectively. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
This meeting is being video recorded for future broadcast.
Thank you, Sean. First item up is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Yes, sir. Sure, Joe, I'll ask you just come sit down, sign yourself in, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Joe Clement. I am an attorney representing a citizens group, which we have named
Clemens or Clement?
Clement, C-L-E-M-E-N-T. Yes, Mr. Quigley. It's been a while. I represent a citizens group, newly formed, that is concerned, has some public and safety concerns about students parking on Anvil Drive and some adjacent streets. The neighbors group consists of almost all of the residents of the Windtree Estates neighborhood, and they come here this evening represented by me. I have members of the group off to me behind me to the right, asking for a few things. They did meet with the township manager, Superintendent Zerby, and a few other individuals last Thursday to see if they could address some of these concerns about kids parking on their street, right on the intersection of Germantown Pike and Anvil Drive, as well as bus traffic and students speeding down the street as well. There is a collaborative approach here that we believe can be taken in connection with this matter. The school district seems to be on board with a short-term and long-term solution. The church across from the school district also seems to be on board. One of our members met with the church pastor this evening, and they are interested in taking a newfound approach towards the zoning matter that was an issue last year. But in the short term, we believe that this board has the authority to take certain actions that can help to alleviate the problem. And that would be to have temporary no parking signs put up in the neighborhood by order of the fire marshal or fire chief. Also to have more permanent signs placed there, similar to ones that are on Kriebel Mill south of Germantown. In fact, those are the only ordained no parking zones that I am familiar with in the township, but have similar ordained no parking areas along Anvil Drive, and also have a 25-mile-per-hour posted speed limit. I think that Anvil Drive is perhaps one of the only township roads that does not have an ordained posted speed limit. So those are the asks this evening. I did have opportunity to speak with your solicitor as well. I understand that the solicitor wants to take certain action and do certain research before the board perhaps takes action on the requests, but nevertheless, those are the requests.
Right. So there's a little bit to unpack there, Joe. The short answer is, as a board, we've talked a little bit about this. We haven't had as you know, we can't really discuss these matters outside of the public eye, so we haven't, it's been sort of whispered left and right to try to get some of the information around as best we can. I know that Lou attended the meeting last week, so that we had somebody sort of in the audience, if you will, to...
And Sean.
Correct, but Sean's not on the board. I was just
Understood.
noting. And Sean certainly has been working very actively behind the scenes with Dr. Zerbe in terms of that. I'm going to have him make some comments about the zoning matter in particular, because that's certainly an item he's had some firsthand knowledge with.
Sure.
And there have been some moving parts. Before I sort of dig into it a little bit more, I certainly want to defer to my compatriots if they have any quick comments they want to sort of throw out there. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's fair to say we all want to have an amenable solution, but we're also trying to be sort of logical in how we go about doing that and how we do that properly and effectively. And certainly we respect our solicitor sort of saying, hey, we've got to make sure we do it correctly and we follow whatever sort of guidelines are in place for us to what we can or can't do effectively.
Of course.
I believe the origin of this started with the parking lot, and as the school doesn't have a whole lot of parking, it bled over to the church. And at one point, that was the solution. So now that that has ceased, now if Germantown Pike and Anvil Drive are the next resources for kids to park as they want to drive. So now we're going to try to make a solution to this. And I hear what you're saying, and we got to come to a really good solution. And I think the short term is we got to do it soon. Long term, there's other plans in there to increase parking, remove busing and stuff like that. But again, this has to, a joint venture on what we're going to do,
Well, right.
how we're going to do it.
Okay.
This problem with the school district, I was just counting 25 years ago. It's hard to believe my son started at Methacton. And before I left, I said something to my wife, who was a student in Methacton 55 years ago, and there were parking problems back then. So this is not a new problem at Methacton. I feel the school district used to have a member of the school board attend our meetings, but that no longer happens. I'm not sure why. But this is not a new problem. It's been going on as far as the rotation and things. And I personally blame the school district for not being involved in the discussion much earlier, trying to solve the problem, rather than pushing it on to the township. We don't give the keys to the cars, the kids driving these cars. And we have school buses available, and we all know that. And if you Google school parking problems, it's an issue across the country. I saw letters and articles from Washington State and Oregon to Virginia to Maine to Florida. Wherever there's a school, there's kids that want to drive. And I understand the school district's position. Once it leaves that property, they really don't have a say in what happens. Their jurisdiction ends at the property line. So it's a problem. But I think there's some internal things, as Mr. Bett has suggested, within the school district property that it can address. And I think it's serious issues. And we addressed it to the board maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. We brought the subject up to the school district regarding the church. We, the township, didn't have much of a problem, but there were zoning issues that had to be addressed. And Mr. Ryan, our old manager, worked with both sides, and they both seemed like they didn't want to go any further with the project. So now it's pushed back on us, I guess. It's a situation. But you listed, I guess, you're a citizens group. How many people are in your group? You said all the people?
Almost the entire neighborhood is part of the group, so that
How many
consists of
people are-
about 18 to 19 households. There's 21 total households in the neighborhood.
I guess I asked the question because as you're going over these things, as far as the parking, the speed limit, and I saw in the letter regarding the buses and things going
Right.
through the development, have you guys in your conversations ever talked about becoming a private road?
No, that issue has not come up, has not been addressed, and really, even if it were a private road, it would not address necessarily the issue with respect to the parking at the throat of the intersection between Germantown Pike and Anvil Drive. That really becomes a safety issue. You can't get a fire truck down there.
You can't get what?
A fire truck down there when kids are parked on both sides of the street. You can't make that turn.
Well, a lot of roads in Worcester have that problem. So once again, we open Pandora's box. And once we take an action, every action has a reaction. You talked about the mile signs. If you've sat here, and I don't recognize many of these faces here, but for years it's been an issue with people on, we won't mention the fellow's name, on Landis Road.
Yeah.
He's come here for years and years complaining about Landis Road.
Right.
And he's contacted the state police, and Berks Road was an issue. Fisher Road's an issue. All the Worcester roads are the same as they were 75 years ago. You don't have sidewalks, they're very narrow. Your roads are much wider than the old roads, and the township has done that through the zoning issues. So, you know, we're well aware of the situation. We've talked
We
about
are.
it at length in the past, but from hearing all your concerns, I know there's an issue down on North Wales Road where they put that community in, and they were concerned about cut-through traffic and cars going through there and the miles they travel, going from Township Line Road to North Wales Road, and the community decided, hey, we'll just make it a private road, and they can restrict it. It's worked out very well for those folks.
Right.
So-
So Stony Creek Farms, which is at the intersection of Township Line and North Wales Road, is what they sort of said, we're just going to close it in and do that. So the speed limit is one in particular. There's more involved than just putting up a stated speed limit sign. We've gone through with a variety, as Steve was saying, with a variety of the neighborhoods. There's a whole process to go through to dictate that. And if we arbitrarily put any number up, again, it sets off. The long and the short of it is we certainly want to make sure that our solicitor is sort of crossing T's and dotting I's on any action that we're going to take to make sure that we're not, as Steve's saying, we're not, there's, 6 pieces that are moving at once here, in terms of trying to help create some resolution. I know there was a parking lot that was created within the within the confines of the school, which, alleviates a little. We think the church helps alleviate a lot. My understanding, and again, a lot of this is, third-party conversations whispered down the lane, is that when there was some parking taking place on the church, that certainly was very helpful to keep it off of the side streets ultimately. And certainly, as you're mentioning, up at Germantown Pike, which is not a Worcester road, so we've now got to get, is that county or state, Wendy? That's state, yeah. So conversations with PennDOT, who, as you know, is, super easy and super responsive when we,
County done.
Well,
but either way, I mean, we're not in disagreement that there's challenges, and if we can help, we certainly, again, we're not saying we don't want to help, but we're also saying, in fairness, we're not in a position tonight to just say, sounds great, let's roll that all out tomorrow morning. We certainly want to be able to do a little more research to find out. Maybe, Sean, you could take a couple minutes just to sort of share your conversations with the church as well, because there's a little bit of an item there that you might be able to help with.
And before Sean does, I think I can preface with this, because it may kind of circumvent some of the conversation. One of our group members did have a meeting with the pastor this evening. The church is on board with moving forward with a solution that would be kind of an intermediate solution that, of course, as everybody is well aware, takes time. Okay, it's going to take at least 6-8 months to get through a zoning process when all the advertising and what have you has to take place. So the church now appears to be willing to be on board with going through that process with the group, actually taking on the cost of doing that. So these folks are putting their money where their mouth is, and they're just looking for a little help from the board. Understandably, the board cannot take action tonight. That's not what's being asked.
Okay.
But rather to take things under advisement, direct the solicitor to perhaps take a look at those 3 items, and then come back here next month with an opportunity to take action.
Agreed. And and the other thing I would share, and I share it to the audience, is as Steve was saying, I got 2 kids. Then when, my 22-year-old is still angry that it's 16 years in one day, there wasn't a new car in the driveway, that he only got a used car, that ultimately was going to be what he was going to have to drive. I mean, I understand that teenagers are not always reasonable, they're not always, but there's also a measure that the school has no requirement to allow them to drive or provide parking and those sorts of things. And I don't know that the school, haven't been to those meetings to know if the school has taken the appropriate action to say, hey, look, everybody doesn't get to drive to school every day simply because they want to. I mean, that's a part of, like, there's things we can do, but there's also things that, to Steve's point, we try to lay it out for the school very particularly, and I'm not saying that to throw anybody under any buses, but from a practical matter, we didn't come and just create a zoning problem. There was a violation that, it's like when you don't know about it, it's one thing. When it gets on your doorstep, we needed to take action to say, hey, look, this is all you need to do. It's a simple application. Everybody said yes, yes, yes. There was, a need to potentially provide a crossing guard so the kids have a safety in terms of crossing Kriebel Mill by the church. And everybody thought that was a great idea a year and a half ago. And then it, again, outside of our hands, the application never showed up, and it didn't move forward for whatever reason. You know, I don't know why that is, but ultimately, it sounds like everybody is good with that, and we're certainly not standing in the way there, and certainly weren't creating a zoning problem just because. I mean, you just know how those things work. Once it sort of gets out, you have to deal and address with it. So that's certainly an area. I know that Wendy's had, you know, Wendy, and you spoke, and certainly, you know, we want them to make sure that here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. If you decide to do A, you know, even getting our traffic engineer to take a look, you talk about sort of the triangulation at the top of, you know, where Germantown Pike and Anvil all come together, and you can't, you know, creates a real issue there. Nobody's disagreeing with that, but we also want to make sure the traffic engineer is saying, yeah, that's the right way to do that, or here's the right way to go about that, so that we potentially have 3 or 4 things that are going on at the same time to try to help mitigate the problem, both in the short term and long term, ultimately, I guess is sort of what we're saying. I don't know if
Rick, once again, as we sit here, I get more pissed off just hearing the conversation, because we sat here and we pushed the school district with that church with the issue. And Mr. Ryan, a number of times, reached out to, I believe, Dr. Zerby or the people in charge there and say, hey, what's going on? How can we move this? How can we expedite it? Because we were concerned with the safety issue. You know, crossing the road, it was a non-conforming use of the property, or that wasn't properly zoned to park there, and somebody was accepting money for it. Before there was a problem, we addressed the situation. We tried to help them out. We tried to push it. And, you know, the school district really falling down on the job. I'm not sure if you folks go to the school board meeting. We take things, if someone comes with a problem here, we're neighbors and friends. We really try to work with the people. You know, we're elected to represent you people, and we really try to do a good job at that. We let people talk, but, you know, this is just, once again, a school board issue. And I said it's been going on for years. My kids laugh about this situation. You know, this person can park, that person can't park. My son, who's now 30-some years of age, used to park on Anvil Drive. The first house, I believe, there were 5 or 6 students that parked in the kid's house there for 4 years or 3 years. And the neighbors there had kids in high school, and they allowed them to do that. But and yes, they used to park down, further down, and cut through the shortest distance through the homes.
right.
And, you know, we addressed that with the school. And it just seems to fall on deaf ears, and I'm just not sure why. It's their students, their concern. You know, we take care of the township issues, and I appreciate you folks coming here, but we really have to work with the school district on this to try to resolve the problem, and they've dropped the ball. I just don't know why it's happened, but Mr. Ludlow has been chair, and he certainly was involved in the conversations with the church, and it just went nowhere.
Unfortunately, but be that as it may, we're here, you know, here's where we're at. And certainly, I think it's okay for us to sort of authorize, and we don't need a motion or anything, but sort of have our solicitor look to see what we can and can't do, and the timing on different things, so that we at least can more educatedly speak to you about the issue. It does sound like, you know, again, there's some pieces that are already in motion. We want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. We certainly appreciate that you've sort of, so that we don't have sort of 18 of the same, you know, everyone's entitled to public comment, but give us some, you know, where you sort of can centralize a message a little bit more. I know you spoke to Bob Brandt at one point in the last couple of days as well, and certainly that's helpful, you know, if we have a means that we can communicate through those sources, if that's okay, and certainly that we can have an opportunity to try to determine, again, what we can and can't do. We just don't, we've seen, again, we have to look at the whole, all the pieces. So if we say yes to A, we don't create problem B, C, D, E, and F, because we quickly went and, you know, as we've seen sometimes, you know, Steve talks about these, you know, we make a decision here we think is a good decision, and then you have an unintended consequence because you just haven't, you haven't encountered what then happens. You know,
Mr. Quigley's been around a while. I'm very well aware of.
Well, it's just one of those things that a good lawyer will look at the case law. And if we did it for that person, why don't we do it for this person? It just becomes a situation we've dealt with in years over the township. And I know the situation you're dealing with. It's just a real problem.
And Mr. Quigley, what we hope to be is the glue that brings the township and the school district together to be able to solve the problem.
What's your reaction from the conversation with the school, or Dr. Zerby, the board? Have they been helpful?
They've been cordial and receptive. And I think that the school board, or Dr. Zerby in particular, recognize that this is a multi-pronged approach to a problem. There has to be a very immediate short-term solution an intermediate solution and a long-term solution. Look, we all recognize that the school is underparked from a student perspective. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, you all have had kids there for however long. So we all recognize that as being an issue. It's no question. The question becomes, how do we address the situation in order to have the citizens not impacted negatively by the fact that that is happening? One of the ways to do that, of course, is to create that interim solution where the kids can then park over at the church again.
Right.
And we hope to be able to do that in conjunction with the church. The group has been able to bring them back to the table.
It's a situation, goes back to the SRO. You guys know what the SRO is? It's a school resource officer. And we had a presentation here a number of years ago. We brought the Lower Providence, the police department in, as well as the state police, essentially giving a contract to one or the other to have police officers in the school, armed police officers taking care of the problems. And my analysis was very simple. I said the local cop, he just finds a cat in a tree, he gets a ladder, walks up, here kitty kitty, the cat doesn't come down, he climbs up in the tree, gets the cat out of the tree, and gives it to the little girl. You call the state police, he comes and looks at the cat in the tree, pulls his gun out, shoots it, catches it, and gives it back to the little girl. The state police here do a lot of municipalities. They're not really into the ticketing. You know, they have a large area to cover. And being if we had local police, it's somewhat different.
Right.
But when you try to get the state police who are doing accidents from, you know, Bluebell up to Schwenksville, it's really hard in the dealings with the state police to come up with those situations. So they're not an enforcement agency going around, and
Right.
I'm personally surprised, and I said to Sean a number of times that I'm surprised the car that parks there in front of the fire hydrant doesn't get ticketed. I'm just, well, it's just, you know, where I grew up, the cops love that money. If you park in front of a fire hydrant, it's ticketed. But I think it goes back to the shortage of police officers in this area, and of course, they're overworked and underpaid like everybody else, and they pick and choose what they enforce, and I hate to see that be a problem. We go through all this, and the state cop says, I'm
Right.
busy. You know, I'm not going to do that, and that's a
Right,
situation
so we've
we wrestle
taken,
with.
that is a challenge and a concern as well, but again, that's just one more sort of brick on the table, if you will.
Sure, and that's fully understood, and we recognize that, you know, the township does not have jurisdiction over the state police, and, well, the state police can't enforce something that's not ordained. So it kind of starts, it's a
Yep.
circular argument in that
Nope,
respect.
understood in terms of that. But I mean, I think, again, I think certainly having our solicitor take a look at the different pieces, get our engineer involved, just to kind of make sure that, yeah, that makes good sense, yes, you can consider that, and then we can be making a determination, say, okay, yeah, that's a direction we want to pursue. You know, in the interim, certainly the zoning is the most straight line, you know, A to B resolution, and I think that everybody, again, I think everybody's on board that that's the right way to deal with that particular element, and hopefully, again, that takes a lot of the pressure off, and then it's just a matter of trying to create a longer term, hey, this is just how this needs to go going forward, you know, in terms of that.
Right, and we understand that, Mr. DeLeo. And-
Okay.
and thank you for your time.
You can call me Rick, by the way.
Yeah, the other piece.
Otherwise, I think I'm older than you.
Mr. Clement, the other thing is, Mr. Betts is relatively new to the board, but he's been thinking outside the box. He really has, probably for 6 months, trying to work with the school district, coming up with some alternatives that he sees it as a vision that, and once again, it doesn't go very far, but they have to do some planning there and have some input from the public on this. You know, you elect some people to the school board, 6, 8 people there, 9 people there, and not knowing a lot about their backgrounds, but sometimes they may not be the right forward-thinking people. Methacton's been there for a long time, but not many changes to the physical plan within the school district, and the school district growing. More kids drive cars,
Right.
buses. If you just sit there, and I'm sure you guys know, if you see the buses, very few kids ride the school bus.
We've presented, I mean, I say we, Lou has specifically presented a handful of things that have sometimes been received well and sometimes not at all, ultimately. And he's been more doing that informally, I guess.
I got a question.
Pull your
Is there any way, the church parking lot, if we could expedite that? I don't know if there's a temporary way we could issue, I know you're not gonna go around zoning, but this 2, 3, 4, 6 months, it seems a little unreasonable in my opinion, because the school used it for the bus drivers in the past. The football mom used it for the students, and then whatever came up that you're not allowed to do that. So now, this, kids need the parking like now, so I don't really think, and I'm just asking the question, this is a legal question. No.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, my suggestion is I'll be happy to, we've heard Mr. Clements ask on behalf of the active property owners. I will take a look at what would,
Sure.
what are the appropriate steps in order to try to implement some of these things. And I'll report back to you, my office will
Yep.
report back to the board. In the meantime, I'd ask Mr. Clements, will you be, if I'm understanding it correctly, there is an intent to file a zoning application.
That's right. The intent is to file a zoning application, provided that the church will allow us to do so on their behalf. And it sounds like preliminarily that they have allowed us to do that, but we will need to
Okay.
confirm that with the church. But
So,
absolutely.
And if, I'm not sure if you know yet, but, do you believe that you would be the one actually submitting that zoning application?
Looks that way. You're stuck with me.
Okay, well, you're certainly, well qualified to do that.
Joe, we welcome them all. We welcome them all. Sean, just make sure he's got the deadlines so that they could be on the February docket. Ultimately, that would be the target, and it's, I don't know, I think it's early February to meet all the appropriate advertising deadlines. That would
Yeah,
be the,
I'll check with the zoning hearing board solicitor to find out when our deadlines are, and I'll exchange information with you before you leave. Just so everybody knows, a 4 to 6 month timeline is much longer than is necessary to advertise a zoning variance for something like this, assuming there was no opposition to it from a neighboring party or anything like that. But yeah, I'd be happy to follow up with you on that. A couple of other things I just wanted to share, you know, since the residents are here, actions that have been taken since the meeting Thursday night. I've reached out to the County Department of Assets and Infrastructure. Germantown Pike is actually a county-owned road, to discuss signage along the shoulder where Germantown intersects with Anvil Drive. So I won't hear back from them until sometime early next week. I've also visited the site with the fire marshal this morning to take a look at the site triangle. We are going to follow up as well with a trip over to the area during drop-off and pickup hours to assess the situation around the larger community. So there's actions that have been taken, you know, in the last week or so since we've met. You had earlier asked just to summarize some things. I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I mean, it sounds like a few of us have been in touch with Pastor Brooks and have all, you know, they, confirmed that they are interested in pursuing it. So again, happy to be a resource with the zoning application and follow up with you afterwards. I just wanted to remind everybody, for the sake of edification, I mean, the zoning hearing board is a separate, independent, you know, quasi-judicial body from the Board of Supervisors. So there are some things that we just realistically can't avoid procedurally in seeking a zoning variance for, you know, for the church. And that's all I just wanted to share.
thank you, Sean. So I think we're good as we can be at this juncture. Would you agree?
I agree. I think that, you know, we'll keep Sean informed. If we can get in front of the zoning hearing, get board, and get final unappealable zoning approval in less than 4 months, I'll eat my hat. But, you know, we'll see how it goes.
Fair enough.
One other question, because you're representing the group. Has there been any property damage or any litter or beer bottle? I mean, not beer bottle, not during the course of the day. I'm on the road. I drive up and down the road probably at least twice a day, maybe 3 times, just seeing what's going on. I know Mr. Betts, he does as well. I know Sean's doing it, but I don't usually see any trash and things, but, you know, I don't get out of my car and look under the cars.
Thank you for asking that, Mr. Quigley. There have been some issues with respect to trash and littering and trespass, of course, from what we assume to be students going into the school. So yes, there have been those issues. Property damage, thankfully, there has not been much property damage other than ripped up lawns and things of that nature, a mailbox or two. So there real damage, but, you know, thankfully, nothing has been too serious. What we really don't want to have happen is something more serious where, you know, an emergency vehicle can't get down the street. That's what we're really concerned about.
Excuse me. Yep.
I got
Okay.
one more question for Joe.
Sure.
You came here for three things. One, obviously you wanted temporary parking signs. Two, you wanted speed limit. Third is the parking. You had a different one at Zerby about the buses, and I don't know if that's an
The idling, is the
Yeah,
idling
so
of
the bus is idling, that's being addressed directly with
Nah,
the
there's more to
school.
it than just idling buses. There was about traffic kind of blocking.
Yes.
Because of the cars parking on Anvil. Is there more to this? I don't understand that part.
More to the part
The
about,
buses, other than the idling, why? Because they sit and idle too much in the back? Or?
they'll sit and idle, they'll also park in that area, or at the, again, I'll call it throat of Germantown and Annville Drive as well.
Okay.
That prevents the road from being a two-lane road. It makes it very difficult for cars to get around there that can't see past the buses or the cars.
Sitting on Germantown Pike or sitting on Anvil?
Both.
They just sit there.
Yes, they sit there, they're idling. What we think happens, what we anecdotally have heard is a lot of it may happen to be where the buses are starting their route in the morning. Perhaps it's where they're doing their last check for no child sleeping in a seat in the afternoon. But they've chosen Annville Drive as that area as opposed to going into the depot. So that's really creating a problem as well. But we're addressing that separately with the school district. That's not, we understand the limitations of what the township can
Sure.
do, and we're trying to confine what we're, the ask to what that is. And then I know Wendy will look into a few things with us. And one of the things that's nice about a fire marshal, no parking temporary sign is the fire marshal or fire chief can enforce that as opposed to the state police.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Joe. Appreciate it.
thank you very much.
We went just a whisper past 5 minutes, but I think that's okay. Chairman's discretion.
Appreciate it.
So, we're still in public comment. If you guys are welcome to stay, but certainly if you want to exit, I won't be offended. But if anybody else has any public comment for the board at this point?
Just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Coming out of Thursday's meeting with Sean and Lou, we felt that it was very amicable and we had a path to move forward, so just wanted to thank you guys for your.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Okay. So not seeing any other public comment, we'll move to our official action items. First item under official action is our consent agenda. First and foremost, does anybody wish to remove any items from our consent agenda tonight?
No.
Okay, then does somebody wish to make a motion for the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda, treasurer's report, the bill payment, and the December 21-22 business meeting minutes.
Fair enough, and just for the record, the payment of the bills for December 2022 will be in the amount of $329,537.84.
Excuse me, I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have Resolution 2023-06. This is going to be a resolution to grant preliminary/final land development approval for the Kerper-Hebner Road Minor Subdivision Plan. Now, I'm trusting you are perfect. I'm going to ask you to come forward, and I'm going to ask John if you maybe could just give us a little high level, and then you might have to answer some questions or not. We shall see.
Thank you, Board Chair. This project proposes to subdivide a 6.17 acre lot into two lots. One will be approximately 2.07 acres and 2.99 will be Lot 2. The Planning Commission has recommended approval and recommended granting the 5 waivers requested. There is no improvements proposed as part of this project, no improvements to the road and no improvements on the lots. All lot improvements will be handled during the building permit phase.
Fair enough, John. So maybe if you could introduce who you are, and then maybe tell us what you're doing and why you're doing, just in your quick words, and then if the board has any questions, we'll pose them to you.
Sure. My name's Ricky Branco. I am from All County and Associates. We did the design work for the subdivision at the property here. And just as he said, it's a single property of 6.17 acres divided into 2 lots. And we're just seeking approval of the subdivision.
So are there any dwellings on the property at this point, or is it just 6 clean acres that they're trying to split to 2 sort of buildable lots?
Correct, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Does any board member have any specific questions?
Sewer water problems with the project at all? I mean, what kind of on-light systems are you proposing to put in?
I guess there is no system proposed. We do have the, I guess, areas that are approved. I guess it would be up to the design of whoever does the building permit plan to then design the systems that would go on there.
Okay.
So John, just for my clarification, at this point, I mean, they still need to go through all the land development processes if and when they decide to build a house on the build permit process, excuse me. But because it's a minor subdivision, it's obviously not quite the same. But ultimately, us approving this element doesn't get in the way of any of that process when that. Okay. Is it going to be public water or is it well water?
It would be well water.
Okay.
On-site septic,
Yes.
and it's perked, I guess, and
Yes.
it's already done that. As far as setbacks on the side yard, I guess it backs up the power lines, I know that. Any problems with wetlands or any,
The one small corner out along Kriebel Mill, and I don't even know if the wetlands actually come onto our property. They just goes right up against it, kind of underneath the power lines there.
Right.
you've addressed all the concerns. Obviously perking, septic, and you're backed under the power line, so your building envelope is secure.
Yes.
Lou Brothers, but how close are you to public water and public sewer? Is it not even a question you could do that?
I
How far down on your Hebner
don't know
River?
actually. how far.
Hebner and Kriebel Mill. It's kind of right at the, right where they come together, correct? That's
Yeah,
my
it's right
understanding.
at the corner. This would be Hebner here, and this is Kriebel Mill, and then the dividing line would come on Hebner.
Right.
Oh, so on the
A little
right-hand
bit further
corner?
down, yeah.
Oh, always the other end.
They're on the other side of Hebner, I
There's a
guess.
house on the corner that lands on the right-hand side of Kriebel and
Where are you talking about again? I'm sorry.
Kriebel and Hebner Road.
Yeah.
That's at the intersection. Is it the property across the street? No, it would be on Kriebel Road. It has to be on the right-hand corner because the left-hand corner has a house on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, if you're in on Hebner, it's on the right.
It's there on the right-hand side.
There's a lot of green around
There's
it.
across Hebner along the way, and then I can't recall if there's ones across Kriebel Mill, but they might be down further away from the property.
I was just trying to get an area as to where the closest, there is nothing. There's nothing out there.
Middle.
I feel like we would have explored it had it been an option.
Okay.
You don't want to just run the line for us all the way down Hebner? I mean, that would be
I
great.
think they're okay with it enough.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good, Rick.
Good.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-06 to grant preliminary final land development approval of the Hebner Road minor subdivision plan.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have other business. Does anybody have any other business they wish to bring before the board this evening?
Want the frogs on?
So I have one item I want to bring up. It pertains to, next month, we're going to be looking to approve the comprehensive plan update. I know that we got an email on that a couple of days ago. I'd like to, it's more just an ask that between now and then we give some thought to what some next steps might be. for us, now that we've taken sort of the comprehensive plan update step, just in terms of actions we might decide to do in terms of, we talked about looking at sewer a little bit more fully. We had talked about Parks and Rec a little bit and trails and some of those things. So just as an ask between now and next month's meeting, maybe give some thought to some direction that we can maybe provide for the township manager on some task items that he can spearhead coming out over 2023. Okay, so we now have public comment. Again, if anybody would like to make any public comment, now would be the time. Okay, Jim?
Jim Malik, Worcester. I attended the Methacton School Board meeting last night, and the Anvil Drive situation was discussed pretty extensively at the meeting. And I think, Mr. Betts, you met with Dr. Zerbe and the crew?
I did.
What, did he say anything to you about their plans for parking and how much it's going to cost the taxpayers?
Are you talking about the church parking lot, or are you talking about a further?
I'm talking about all the options.
He created a parking lot behind the Farina building, and he created 40 spots, and he gave me this.
That's correct.
Now, it's paved, it's lined and striped. That helped.
How much is that going to cost?
He stated $50,000.
Right, that's what he said last night at the meeting.
Yeah, I don't know where that went. I don't understand. I
So-
don't get that.
40 spots, 50K, well, I mean, whatever. But did he discuss the deficit of parking spots for the amount of students that they have?
On the meeting I went with Sean, he stated,
Yeah, I believe he said the estimate was that there were 350 students per class, so that at some point in the school year, there was roughly 700 students available to drive. And I believe there were somewhere around, I want to say 200 or maybe 250, was it 200 parking spots?
Correct. So that was presented last night as well. I was hoping that we would hear these facts during the discussion. So 40 spots,
The numbers again, how many driver-age students did he say were in the high school?
His estimate was 700 based off of the total number of students estimated to be in each class. So that assumes 100% of students have a car and a license and are driving.
He has only 200 spaces available.
Roughly, I believe it was about, I'm going from memory here, and I believe it was about 200 spaces, if I'm,
I was reading some literature about this today, and I think I mentioned to you who's the person the school district just hired to take care of the custodians and stuff?
I'm not aware.
Whatever the title is. There's a national organization out there, it's based in Arizona, that looks at all the infrastructure within school districts across the country. And they said the standard they usually recommend is to have it anywhere from 50 to 53% of the parking spaces available to avoid the problems within a school. So if they're at 1/3, so they're well below the threshold that the national organization of infrastructure within a school proposes. So I find that interesting.
so the point of that mental exercise is 40 spots for 50K is not going to take care of the parking situation, okay? When you have a, 500 deficit, 400 deficit,
Yeah, for sake of comparison, because I've been driving Anvil frequently, at least once a week or more for the past few months, I've noticed the average has gone down from about 25, 26 cars before that parking solution was completed to now about 17 or 18 on average. So there's a noticeable reduction, but certainly not enough to absolve the problem of the site triangle at Germantown and Anvil.
So the other thing Dr. Zerbe discussed is moving the bus depot and making that area. Yeah. But you know how much that's going to cost?
Gave him an option and even work with him and try to like, it would take a while, it's not
No,
gonna do it
I
overnight.
get it. You know how much that's going to cost?
It's a stupid amount of money,
Yeah, like 250K, right?
more.
Yeah, maybe more. Okay, so for a situation where people are parking legally on the road, right now, legally on the road, right?
After this, I went down there and I counted 5 on Anvil and 9 on Germantown.
Was that?
I counted 5 cars on Anvil and 9 on Germantown.
Right.
After this was completed.
Right.
The church would alleviate, if the kids would cooperate, that would alleviate, the church has at least 40 spots,
But you gotta understand what we're dealing with.
short term.
You gotta understand what we're dealing with. We're dealing with kids, okay?
I understand that.
You can put up all the speed limit signs
I
in the
know,
world, and unless you get a state trooper sitting on that road, kids are gonna be kids and do
Whatever
their
they
thing,
want.
right?
I know.
My concern is, I don't wanna see them walking through their properties. That's a problem. That's gotta be addressed, okay? But, you know, in my development, I got people from Sunnybrook cutting through and walking around my development. I don't come here to you guys and go, hey, man, kick these people out of my development.
I
I
understand.
got people parking on both sides of the street coming in for, you know, maintenance of their properties and this and that. That stuff happens. So I was hoping they would stick around. My solution for them, and it takes care of everything for everybody, meaning the district doesn't have to pony up, like you said, crazy money, would be a gated community, right? And the perfect example of how that worked is Stony Creek, right? Stony Creek had to decide whether they wanted a gated community or leave it open, right? They had all the same concerns because their one street on North Wales Road connects to Township Line, and people were cutting through their development to get to Township Line, speeding. People were coming in that shouldn't have been coming in. So they all made a decision to go with the gated community. And since they're in my district, I know them, they're all happy because you got the gates up, nobody cuts through. You don't have people parking up here, there, and everywhere. And they control what happens in there, just like these folks want to control what happens in their little piece of the world, right? So, do a gated community, right?
Want another fun fact?
What?
In 1999, that 50-plus acres that's Anvil Drive was offered to the school, and it was sold to Gambone for $1.2 million. Not a lot of money when you spent $50 million on Arrowhead. You wouldn't have any of these problems. We'd have a nice campus. But
Well-
the elders of the past couldn't foresee any of that.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And the school district's got some things going on. The other thing
Pigeonhole. I mean, you can't build that school.
I know. The other thing I got concerned about is I listen to what's coming from up here, and you guys want to facilitate, you want to be, work with everybody, school district, these folks. Little information for you guys to know. Last time I saw Mr. Clement was at Commonwealth Court down in Harrisburg for one of our right-to-know cases here. But since then, he is now the solicitor for the Audubon Water Company. And I don't know whether you know what's going on between the district and the Audubon Water Company. Not good. There's an extreme amount of friction going on. And I've heard talks of litigation. Well, he's the solicitor for Audubon Water, right?
Building something, or?
No, it's a long, you don't have time, we don't have time to go over it. But basically, there was a mistake made with the sprinkler system that cost the district $500K,
Nice.
right? And then there's been other things happening that's maybe another $100K. So right now, there's an adversarial relationship between the district, Audubon Water, and he's the solicitor for Audubon Water. So you guys need to know that, because if he's going to Zerbe, they're not on good terms.
Get along.
Right. So that's something you need to know.
Separates depending who the client is? Are you suggesting that
Well, me personally,
animosity to?
if I'm going to pick a lawyer to do the thing, and you want to do it like, where everybody gets along, you pick somebody who might be amenable to the district, right? Now, if you want to pick somebody who's a bulldog and has something to, go after the school district for, well, then there's another, way to go.
I think we don't even want to touch that subject, but we're not involved in picking lawyers for anybody.
No, I got you, but what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from you guys, and what should happen, is it should be like this joint thing where everybody kind of talks, communicates, gets along, is working in the same direction. I'm just telling you guys, from my perspective of going to all the school board meetings, that there is friction there. Just go watch the videotapes. Some of the board members want to sue Audubon Water Company, okay, for what's been going on. And I can't, that story's going to take a half an hour. So I guess what I'm saying is, you need to have all those facts so that when we go down the road, or when you guys go down the road with this, and there's maybe an impasse or something, you understand what the whole picture is going on. I mean, I thought the way you guys handled it was great. Me personally, I would suggest put up gates. Put up the gates. This way you control everything. The traffic, the kids. Kids can't park in there when the gates are up, right? As far as the fire company and there being a safety issue, I've got emails from the prior interim manager who went up and inspected that intersection and said there are no safety concerns up there, right? Except for the trees that were overgrown and had to be cut,
Right.
right? So you've already had one of your interim managers inspect that situation and found it to be not unsafe, okay? I see the concern. The way to take care of it is real simple. It's not a hard thing to do. We're going back and forth, district, this, that, church. Just put up some gates. One gate there, and then all the cut-through traffic, gone. No kids parking there because they can't get in because you got gates, right? No need for speed limit signs because everybody's on board over there. That's what's I was there when Stony Creek was trying to figure out whether to do it. They did it. They love it over there. It's fantastic. So that's my suggestion would be that.
Fair enough.
All right?
Yeah,
Appreciate
Rick, to Dr. Moloch's comment, I'm sure it'll come up again, but the interim manager, because we had a conversation about that, because of all his 38 years being involved in the fire company and all the things he did with Upper Dublin Fire Company, Flowertown Fire Company, that
Yeah.
he addressed the situation because he was called out there and he said there was no problems. But once again, depends where the cars were on the street at the time. If
I get
cars
that.
weren't near the stop sign, but
get that.
once again, those cars have been right at the edge of the stop sign.
See, you want to put something like this to bed, okay? Meaning, when you do it and get it done right, it's done. No more complaints, everybody's happy, things work well, right? You go up there, start putting signage up, and the kids don't obey the signs. What do? You call the state police, okay? Then you piss off some kids, then you piss off their parents, and then it goes back and forth, right? So, well, let me ask you this, Mr. Betts. Have you heard anything about any of those kids being harassed at all?
Some gossip of, I think the Annville Drive parents weren't happy with whatever's, it's all about Annville Drive.
I got it.
It just gossip. I couldn't.
I got it. Well, I've heard stuff too. And I guess the question becomes, if it's going to work out, then there's got to be like everybody going this way, right? So what I'm saying to you is, from what I'm hearing, they want no parking signs, speed limit signs, all these other things. What happens when the kids don't obey the signs, which they're not going to? Most of them will, but some won't. So then you got another problem to deal with, which is, okay, state police get involved, right? And then, it's not good. We're going after our own students. That's not good. So you want to find a solution that puts this whole thing to bed once and for all, right?
Jim, we understand that. And I think that's why I think Sean had addressed the situation as well as Mr. Ryan, that it's like when you chase the rats out of one hole, they go in the next hole. And that's the concern of the township, is that how far will the kids move down the street? And I see Bert back there smiling because I drove around North Penn School District Day looking at all the signs posted in that area, and how far, probably Bert was the one that did it, pushing the people further and further out, and how far are the kids willing to walk? with
Did
the
he push him to Worcester? Did he
Yeah,
push him all the
well,
way to
yeah,
Worcester
I think really the
Elementary?
answer is
Well,
really
see,
the church. The church has the big parking lot there,
I get that.
and where they can be
get that.
happy to be there rather than going
It's a
to the
big
next.
parking lot, but according to the numbers, it might not
Right.
work.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah, we,
It's a Band-Aid. The permanent, in my opinion, the permanent fix, you put up a couple gates and it's done, right? It's done. Because they can't get in, right? Nobody can speed through there now. You can't drive through to get, around stuff. Well, the problem's finished. It
You
should be
get rid of
done.
the school buses off the lot in that building, you just gained 500 spots.
That's right.
100 buses and 100 drivers.
That's right, but there's insane money involved. There's insane taxpayer money involved.
Well,
Right?
they have Audubon, they could put a depot somewhere. You could fix things if you want to fix them.
Yeah, but he went over it last night at the meeting. There's insane money involved to do what they got to do because it's apparently attached to the educational buildings and all kinds of other stuff. So if they move it, it's going to be a big deal, I mean, that's what he says.
My opinion is.
I don't know.
If you want to fix something, you can fix something within reason.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Mullock, I
Don't
think
want to fix it, you're not.
this conversation really should be happening at the school board. I mean, they're the issues there that should be addressed. Once again, Mr. Betts brought up safety issues that have been ongoing in the school district for years, and they haven't addressed that situation. And now, because they didn't address the situation, it's coming back to the Board of Supervisors here. And I know running a business, I have an audit every year from 2 different insurance companies. They come out and check this off, check that off, check that off. They get out a whole list, and they do. And it's about safety, and I'm sure the school district does the same thing. And the parking has to be a concern on that checklist.
Again, and I would ask, have there been any accidents up there?
I don't know.
Has any kid been injured? Has,
I don't,
I mean, those are the questions I'd be asking about safety. It's like, okay, kids get in an accident, kid's been injured, kids doing damage to people's property, that's not good, right? So, but you already have one of your own people on the record saying that it's not a safety concern. You already have your own interim township manager saying that, right? I mean, I got the email, so I know.
yeah,
So I get, my point is that you can see what's going to happen. I see what's going to happen, right? You're going to do, even if you grant these temporary measures, kids are not going to obey them, right? I mean, most will, but some won't. Then what do you do with that situation? So, you need to have something that works,
thank
That's
you.
just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate the comments, as always. Does anybody else wish to make any public comment to the board tonight? Okay. Seeing none, then motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.